Till is the new film playing in theaters. If you don't know what this film is about Emmett Till, the 14-year-old black kid that back in the 40s. I'm sorry if I'm getting dates wrong. Whatever. Point is, decades ago, when our country was very much at its, very much still in its very much racial tensions. Not to say there isn't any now, but more so than we have now. Black people are just getting rights to vote in certain areas, things like that, and you know this kid was lynched, and it's a big horrific story if you don't know the story. And I would say if you don't know the story, I mean, you should not only watch this movie, but you should also just research and read it, because there are a lot of details that I'm sure this film misses. I'm not an expert on this story, but I think that there's probably parts to the story that were greatly exaggerated for the screen, as most based on true story movies are. But I gotta say, I did enjoy this movie. I think it was a little bit too long, but I did enjoy the moments with this film. And I think what's really great about this movie is you understand a mother's plight. There is no pain greater than losing a child, as many will tell you. Not that I've actually lost a child. But yeah, there is no greater pain than that sort of feeling. And so, you know, they do a great job at the beginning of this movie really setting how innocent this child is. And then to see him get killed in the way he is, gruesomely, I might add. I don't know if it would have been distasteful. They would have showed somewhat of that or hinted at it a bit more than a lot of it just happening off screen. But I mean, I'm sure that I think it's sure in terms of a general audience, it works better that they didn't show it. But just for me personally, you watch this film now, and it's really fantastic and powerful. It makes you think, hey, uh, not just of the time that it's set in, but how places of the world, including our own country, are still very similar to this now. Um, and how, I mean, look at the way when there's a scene in this movie where this dude's like, politicians will be willing to help your plight to gain votes, blah, 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 blah. She's like, I don't want to play the political game. My son just died and I want to deal with that fact. And, that is a very powerful thing. And, that's a very powerful idea. But you have to think about how many people now are put in these situations where they're playing the political game for a tragedy that, shouldn't be publicized in the way it is through news media. And I thought that was an interesting angle. I liked certain moments of cinematography when she's learning that her son, who was kidnapped, she doesn't actually know he's dead yet, but if you knew the story, you knew that was coming. But that scene where she finds out and she faints horrifically, just beautiful moments like that. I think the great performances in this movie really carry this movie. You understand people's pain, like when the uncle, I believe, that he was staying with, talks about having to make a choice, his family or this boy's life. He chooses his family, and you don't blame him for it, but you're also a little resentful and saddened by that fact. It gets all these emotions out of you that are very deep, and they give you a lot to think about after the film. I think the lead actress of this movie definitely deserves a Best Actress nomination. I wouldn't say win, but definitely a nomination. I would say some actors in this film definitely deserve Best Supporting. This was a pretty good movie about this, the story that is well publicized, but it's also not at the same time. So seeing this out there more in and being covered, and there's still details about this story that are being uncovered to this day. And I think that shows that our country is still dealing with its racial tensions from the past. Like, people go, oh, this was decades ago. Sure, but we're still finding out details about this stuff that was covered up all this time. There is still unresolved feelings and resentment from the people who are still alive or were alive and things like that. And so I think it's important that this film opens the door to those kind of discussions and thoughts, and you know, uh, just making people understand what they're dealing with. You know, it was a fantastic performance. It wasn't a great movie. I still think this movie could have been shot better, could have had a better score, could have had, you know, better, just technical, just little nitpicky things that could have made it a little bit better. But in terms of what it made me think and what made me feel, the movie was good for what it was. And I think it's definitely worth a watch if you can make it out to the theater. If you can't make it out to the theater, it will be probably on Peacock soon because it is a Universal movie. But I did really enjoy this film.